Today on HandyDadTV, I'm going to show you how I built these double doors with transom windows to complete my shed project. Coming up. All right, here you can see the completed project. This is my shed done. The window installed, my vents are installed up the top, the doors are on finally, the trim, the gutters. And this space over here with this extra gable is where the greenhouse is going to be added, but that is phase 2. But phase 1 is complete. Now this is a 10 by 15 shed, and it's got about a foot overhang in the front. Just in the front is where I put the overhang. And that way the roofing material and the sheathing is an even 16 feet long. Now you can see this paint color here was chosen because it was color matched to our house, and just white trim. Really like this is LP Smart Side, and I saved the pieces that would have been here if I built a solid wall. I saved those pieces, and that's what I wound up using for the panels for the door. Now the doors have 3 hinges on each. I got a kit that came with the 3 hinges as well as the latch. And the latch has a lock in it, and this is how it closes on the inside. Let me turn the light on in here. I did put electric in. See, that's how it latches on the inside, and it's adjustable, so depending upon the thickness of your doors. And then it has 2 barrel bolts, one at the top and one down at the bottom. A little squeaky. And I put a hook and eye here so that I can open it and the wind doesn't blow them closed. To do these doors, I started with the frames, and the frames were by default 2x4s. And that just gives the door a lot of thickness because this sheathing itself is not very thick. So that's why I went with the frame. And I put it on, 2x4s on flat. And everything is put together with construction adhesive. I don't know if you can see, but there's construction adhesive here in all the joints. And the sheathing is attached with construction adhesive as well as screws. And of course you can see the corners are screwed together as well. So my rough opening here is 74 inches tall and 60 inches wide. So on paper, it was 2 30-inch doors. Now these windows are 10 inches high by 23 inches wide. And in theory, when you add a 2x4 on either side of them, you get 30-inch doors. So that was basically how I was looking at it. But because the opening was exactly 60 inches, I needed additional room. Plus I knew that the walls, this front wall was a little bit wonky. It wasn't perfectly level when it was put up. So, in fact, you can see how my trim is tight to it here, but down the bottom you can see it comes out further. So the doors are level, and the floor is level, but the walls are not, they were not put up correctly. But you know what? The way that I install these doors, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to show you how I did that. And yeah, it's a really straightforward process. Now I got this 2-pack of windows from Amazon. I'll put a link to them in the video description. They come in white or black. Of course, I chose black windows for my motif. Just starting my layout of the doors on my garage floor. That's the flattest surface that I have. And I'm starting with the width of the windows, which is a little bit wider than 23 inches. Because if that was 23 inches, then 3.5 for each one of the 2x4s would make it 30 inches across. But that's a little bit big. And I think the 2x4s are a little bit wide too. But I'm gonna solve that by later, I'm gonna cut 1/2 inch off of this side, this edge. And then that way, the siding and the trim can overlap the edge of this door. So this is going to be the door number 1 that closes and latches from the barrel bolt. And this one is going to be the one that closes against it, which means this is the one that opens first. This has the latch on it. So first I cut the short pieces to form the rough opening for the windows. And I made 6 of them identical size. All right, instead of ripping down that 2x4, I decided to just swap it out for a 2x3. I went back to the store and got the straightest 2x3 I can, which is a challenge, believe me, because they're cheap wood usually. So anyway, you can see clearly this seam is offset. It's farther to the right. But if I cut the sheathing straight down the middle between the windows, that's how this door will overlap this door and hold it closed. And my overall width here for both doors is about 59 3/8. So I've got enough room. I can put like 1/4 of an inch on each side and a little space in the middle too. It's all gonna work out very well. Next, I cut the 4 vertical pieces for the door frame, all the exact same length. Now this is the construction adhesive that I used, and I cut the tip off pretty big, but you also have to remember there's a seal inside the container, and so you need to use something to poke a hole in that seal. It just so happens that my caulking gun has a little needle there that you can use for this purpose. And I just poked a bunch of holes in it, put it in the caulking gun, and I was ready to go. I put a small dab of construction adhesive on each one of the joints, and then I clamped them together with, I have these 36-inch pony clamps, and that way they don't spread when I put the screws in. It holds them as steady as possible. The screws are getting kind of toe-nailed in at a 45-degree angle. They're 2.5-inch screws, I believe. And didn't drill any pilot holes at this point, although I think I did later on because it just got easier that way. Here you can see a close-up of me driving that screw. You can see they are self-drilling screws. And I'm incorrect. They were 3.5-inch screws you can see on the box there. And after I got the 2 top pieces in, I just did a quick test fit with the window to make sure everything was right before I kept going. All right, they are just clamped in place at the moment, but you can see, and I have them clamped tightly against the sides. That's why there's so much space in between them. But when I add 1/4 of an inch on each side, that should be fine. It should be perfect. And I have my center line marked right there, which you can see this one overlaps it just a little bit, but when I add 1/4 of an inch over here, it's going to overlap it even more, and that's where this one is going to overlap this door. Hopefully that makes sense. You'll see it when it's done. That's the extent of the special effects you're going to get on my channel. I don't take the time to do anything fancy. But here you can see how the window was put in. I used a Sawzall to cut out the opening. And then I put beads of caulk around the top and the sides. Left the bottom open just so that if any water did get behind it, it would come down and drain. But I don't know. I mean, there's an overhang. I don't expect a lot of water to be over here anyway, but you never know. Now, the reason I had done the window instead of continuing the doors at that point was because it was a rainy weekend. In fact, it rained for several weekends. And that's why I prioritized the window over trying to get the doors in. And here you can see I am actually building the ramp. And the reason why I did that was because I ordered a tractor, a zero-turn mower. And so I needed a way to get it in there. So while in between the rainstorms, this is what I also did. Okay, now what I'm doing is attaching the two doors together to make them one single door unit. And I'm using paint sticks as spacers, one from Lowe's and one from Home Depot. They work out to be just about 3/16 of an inch with the two of them together. So I sandwich that between the two doors and clamp them together. And then a board on the top and the bottom and clamp those as well so they're nice and even. And then I screwed in together from the bottom. And that way I can work on the top. The doors are going to stay in a consistent spacing while I put the sheathing on. Now here I'm measuring the width of my door unit, the two of them together, and marking the center line. And that's important because I also marked the center point between the opening on the shed itself, and I transferred that mark onto the piece of sheathing so that everything is kind of consistent and so that the lines on the sheathing are straight with what's installed already on the building. With the sheathing clamped in place, I snapped lines and cut off the excess so they were even with the edge of the frames. Next, I drove a few temporary screws to hold the pieces of sheathing in place without the clamps. With the board clamped in place as a straight edge, I cut the center line down the sheathing, and I only cut the thickness of the sheathing, so I'm not cutting into the framing, just the sheathing itself, right down the middle of the door. Here I'm putting some witness marks with a Sharpie marker from the frame on the sheathing so that I could unscrew it and put on the construction adhesive, and that way I can make sure that it go back in the perfect position, exactly as they were when I cut them. I did the same thing on the other door, but this one has the seam on it, so I put a small bead of construction adhesive right on the seam, and I didn't put any kind of a backer. There's no 2x4 on the inside of that door. The construction adhesive is all that's needed to hold the two of them together. Now here I'm drilling holes and then making lines to cut out the sheathing for the windows. The windows add a little bit of thickness, you can see here. And I was originally thinking that in order for my trim to sit over it, I was either going to have to remove a little bit of the trim, kind of create a bit of a rabbit here, or I was going to use my router to lower, remove a little bit of the sheathing here and let the window sit lower. But in retrospect, I figure most of you don't have routers, and in all honesty, it is not going to be that big of a deal. I mean, it's going to be hardly noticeable that the trim is not perfectly flat. So I'm not going to bother with it. I'm just going to put the trim on the surface and see how it goes. Now here I'm using that same clear caulk again across the top and the sides of the windows, and that way the bottom is open in case any water gets in there. But I doubt it. I don't think there's going to be any water in it. But you never know. To attach the trim, I'm using these 2-inch trim head screws because they're much better than nails, much stronger than nails, and they still leave a very small hole that's easy to fill, and once you paint, you can't see them at all. All the trim you see here on the door is 1x4. Also, this is the smart side, but it's smart trim, I guess they call it. It's all 1x4 except that piece in the middle. That's actually 1x6 in between the two windows. And I know it's a solid piece, and you'll see I'm going to cut that in a moment. I'm going to cut it right down the middle and separate the two doors. Here I am using a Home Depot paint stick as a spacer to attach the side trim with the hinge. Now here you'll see I'm using paint sticks once again as spacers at the bottom of the door to hold it off of the floor appropriately. The floor is level, so I knew by putting it flat against the floor, the door would be plumb as well.
Voila! Beautiful. It works.
Now you'll notice I didn't put all the trim on this door before hanging it, and there's a reason for that. So when I went to the other door, I did put all the trim on it, and I purposely waited because that way I could put, you'll see, I'm going to put it so that it's square and looks perfect. It's more important that it looks perfect than it be actually plumb or level. It's got to look right. And speaking of getting things perfect, when I put the right door in place, the trim at the top did not line up perfectly, so I used this arm jack to raise it just a tiny bit before screwing it in place. With both doors permanently attached, now I can put the trim on the left door, again using a paint stick as a spacer to make sure everything was just perfectly in line. The sheathing was sticking out a little bit far on the left side door, so I just used a belt sander just to shave it down a little bit and make sure they fit perfectly. And the final step was the trim across the top. I have it overlapping by 1 inch on each side. And again, I used a paint stick just as a shim to raise it up a little bit on the left-hand side so that the spacing was perfect across the entire top. All right, so there you have it. Now you see how I built my doors on this shed and got an overview of the whole thing. So let me know your thoughts. And if you've ever made shed doors, let me know what you would do differently. So this completes phase 1 of the project, and phase 2 is the greenhouse, which is going to be on the side over there. So I'm really looking forward to doing that, and there'll be another few videos that come out about that in the coming months. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you do. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Hey there, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to be the first to know when new videos are posted. Look for HandyDadTV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and visit the website HandyDadTV for more great ideas and information.